So UFC 297 just concluded, and this was by far the worst card of the year by a mile, by a landslide. And I know we only had one other card this year, but this card takes the cake for the worst card of the year. Canada, we're never going back. You guys have made two stinky cards in the past year. 289 was an absolute abomination, and now you put on 297, which was even more of an abomination. At least Oliveira got a finish and had an exciting fight with Beneil Dariush at 289. This one had absolutely nothing. The main event was good, a good scrap, and I enjoyed it. We'll get to that in a second. But this card as a whole very much did disappoint and was no bueno in the Kindle MMA score. If I had to give like a rating to this, like a 1 out of 10, it's a 2, solid 2. And the only way I don't give it a 1 is because Dricus and Sean Strickland had a good little scrap, a nice good fight. So yeah, Canada, you're done. But overall in this video today, I'm going to give my entire recap of 297, not every single fight on the card because that would be absolute torture and I would hate myself for that. But I'll give the best moments, the good highlights of what I saw and what to take away from it. But if you get bored during this video, I don't blame you. I was pretty much sleeping during this card as well. It was just overall lame city. But recap, fraud checks. People got fraud checked. Fighters got fraud checked bad in this card. It was fraud check city. I get to the main one, Mike Mallet, but I think there's a couple other ones that you can probably argue were fraud checks. Charles Jourdain, not the biggest fraud check because he has lost a couple times. He lost to Julian Erosa. Sorry, that's the guy who he lost to a very long time ago. That was kind of his initial fraud check, but I did think that he was going to make a resurgence and like maybe find a way to get back into the rankings or fight a guy or get a fight to get himself into the rankings. But losing to Sean Woodson looked pretty tough for him. It looked not good. He got pretty much outstruck throughout 3 rounds. There was some confusion at the end of the fight where Jourdain thought that he won the fight, which he clearly didn't, but somehow he thought he heard his name being said by Bruce Buffer, but Bruce Buffer pretty clearly said that Sean Woodson won the fight. So that happened, but Charles Jourdain can't really handle the range. He just pretty much got outstruck. He didn't really understand how to get in tight and try to fight in the phone booth with Sean Woodson. Don't blame him. Sean Woodson's a really long guy, pause. But I guess you can say it was a mismatch to put Sean Woodson versus Charles Jourdain. Jourdain just doesn't deal with the range very well. But yeah, Charles Jourdain. Fraud check, not a huge fraud check, kind of an iffy fraud check like Brad Katona as well. That's my other one that I have for a fraud check. These guys really aren't too big of fraud checks, but they did have a little bit of hype because Brad Katona did win tough and Charles Jourdain's an exciting fighter. But Brad Katona, tough guys just can't hang, I guess. They just don't have it in them. Gets fraud checked by Garrett Armfield. I did terrible on picks. Dude, I went like 3 for like, oh no, I think I did 4 for 8. I did terrible on picks, but all these guys just let me down, like Brad Katona. Garrett Armfield isn't really that great of an opponent, but he still found a way to get outstruck by him throughout 3 rounds. He couldn't really take him down and hold him down. Just Garrett Armfield overall looked way more composed, way more fluid with his striking, way quicker as well, and just overall was a better striker than Brad Katona and pretty much put that mustard on him throughout 3 rounds. Brad Katona, tough guys, again, they can't hang, they're not good. But moving on to the actual biggest fraud check, a real fraud check, not an if, this is a certified fraud check classic, and that is Mike Mallet, bro. Mike Mallet got absolutely embarrassed by Neil Magny. Of all people, man, this guy Mike Mallet, right? He was pretty much supposed to dog walk through Neil Magny. Neil Magny had all of the excuses to lose, man. This guy was on his last rope. He had 1 strand of hair left on his armpit. He had nothing left to really give a true effort to win this fight besides money. Neil Magny pretty much had his legs exposed and compromised against Ian Gary, along with taking, I think, some of the biggest emotional damage to the point where he's in a custody battle. He's in court fighting for custody of his kids. He has a ton of baggage carrying into this fight. And Mike Mallet, even though I did think he won the first 2 rounds, he looked pretty good during that process. Was it a boring fight? For sure, but he was winning the fight up until he pretty much gassed out, went for a guillotine, fell down, and got absolutely mauled by Neil Magny on the ground and pounded out to a TKO finish with like 30 seconds left in the fight. He got put down, mollywopped, and exposed and total fraud checked. And again, that's it for Canada, man. That was their last good prospect. Every single prospect that Canada has right now, has been mediocre, and Mike Mallet was their last chance. And he actually put the Michael Chandler in the Canadian Michael Chandler in this one because he gassed out in that third round and got dumped for it pretty much. It really does suck for Mike Mallet. He has pretty much, I don't know what he can really do now, fight another unranked contender, but is he going to be anything in the UFC? No. Losing to Neil Magny pretty much proves that. If you lose to Neil Magny, then you're not going to be anything in the UFC. But if you do beat him, you can probably be a champion or at least be a really high ranked contender. Besides Jeff Neal, that's the only outlier in that whole situation. But yeah, the UFC is pretty much in absolute shambles because Mike Mallet lost. He was their last hope of really getting into that Canadian market. Since he lost, there's no market. There's just no market they can use to promote a fight for a Canada card again. There's no reason to go back to Canada since Mike Mallet lost. My guess, if Mike Mallet won, they would do like a fight night main event with him in Canada, maybe a fight night, Ontario, I don't know, maybe Toronto. They would find a way or find a reason to go back to Canada because of Mike Mallet being a ranked contender. He probably would have been, ranked number 13. Probably could have fought like a Sean Brady or somebody come off a loss in the welterweight division. But yeah, there's literally no reason to go back to Canada. And I don't want to go back. They have trash cards. It's terrible. Absolute fraud check city. And it wasn't only fraud checks, there was actually robberies on this card today. The main one, the big main card, I'm not going to go into the main event. That was maybe a robbery, but I'm not going to hold it as a robbery. I'll dive into that into a second. We'll save that for later. But I think an actual robbery that occurred on this card was Movsar Evloev versus Arnold Allen. To me, Allen won that fight pretty clear, rounds 1 and 3. I don't know what the judges were seeing scoring that fight 29-28 in favor of Movsar Evloev. I understand like grappling is important in MMA, but you just can't score holding him against the cage, scoring Grammy rolls and having control. Like he didn't have much control time in the first place, but I don't know what the wrestling really provided. Yeah, the strikes were pretty close and yeah, it was pretty even on the feet, but I think that Arnold Allen did more damage in total than Movsar Evloev in rounds 1 and 3. Round 2, no debate, definitely Movsar Evloev, but rounds 1 and 3, man, I think pretty clearly goes to Arnold Allen. And maybe you kind of could argue round 1 for Evloev. I think pretty clearly rounds 3 for Allen and pretty clearly round 2 for Evloev. No debate there. But round 1 is kind of the swing round, I guess. And I guess you can't argue that Evloev kept it kind of close in the strike department along with the grappling. So that kind of gives him 2-on-1 compared to Allen, but I thought Allen landed the better strikes there. I thought he won rounds 1 and 3. Again, like worst robbery of all time, no. You can definitely argue for Evloev. I don't hate the argument, but in my eyes, Arnold Allen won that fight rounds 1 and 3. And this really sucks for Allen, man. He loses his number 4 spot, and who does he fight next? Like, who does he even get? I don't know. Like, what does he even do at this point? He just lost to Evloev. He drops down probably number 5 or 6 at least. He might go up higher to like number 7 or 8, but number 6 is pretty much set in stone, and number 5 is pretty much set in stone for Arnold Allen here. And I don't know what to do with him anymore. It sucks, man. Like, I think he's pretty good. I think he's pretty exciting. I think he's wicked fast. He has a lot of skill, a lot of talent at featherweight. He can be something. I know he lost to Max Holloway, but I still think he can like improve and have a good career in the top 5. But now I just don't really know. He might just be a gatekeeper for featherweight for the rest of time or for the rest of his career. And for Evloev, he looked good. Obviously, he hurt Allen at one point in the second round. He showed some improvements in his striking, but there were still some holes there. He still looks a little bit weird in the striking department, but yeah, if he fought Dupuria back then, I think Dupuria would have smoked him. Probably would have KO'd him in the first round or TKO'd him. He didn't show me too much to where I was like, wow, Evloev is the real deal. He can definitely be champion. He just kind of minorly outpointed Arnold Allen, and that's an argument too. And also, I didn't mention this, knees to a grounded opponent. What has Aljamain Sterling done to this sport? Evloev was kind of walking backwards with Allen on his neck, and he was holding his one hand on the ground, but he was also moving backwards at the same time, trying to get back to the cage, and he was getting kneed in the head. And I don't know, like there's definitely a gray area there because he was moving his hand up and down a little bit. So I guess by the rule book, by terminology, those are illegal strikes, but that's a stupid rule at this point. Get rid of it. That rule is so dumb. If you're actively moving with one hand on the ground, you should be kneed in the head. Like, seriously. That position is pretty much asking for knees. Like, that is a knee position. And the fact that you can't knee somebody there is absolutely criminal, and it allows people to get away with it and allows for stupid stoppages like what happened in this fight. So, yeah, UFC, fix that rule. It's dumb. But moving on to the other robbery in this card, the main event. Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Was it a robbery? No. No, it's an extremely close fight. I don't know who won. I haven't rewatched it yet at this point. When I watched the fight live, I scored the rounds 2, 3, and 4 for du Plessis, but they were extremely close. And I think round 2 is like the big major round on who you think wins this fight. I think rounds 1 and 5 are pretty much for sure for Strickland. No argument for me there. I think he won clearly rounds 1 and 5, but round 2 is the most iffy round of the entire fight. Rounds 3 and 4 were pretty clear for du Plessis for me. You can kind of debate it a little bit, but I do think that du Plessis was landing the better strikes on Strickland's chin. Even if he got outlanded those rounds by like 1 or 2 strikes, he was landing really good power shots and good right hooks that were whipping the head back of Strickland. So I really do give those rounds to DDP. But round 2 is the main PowerPoint presentation. This is the main argument, this is the bottom line right here, round number 2. And I really can't tell you who won that round. It's so close. DDP was getting outstruck the beginning of that round. He wasn't doing too hot. He wasn't doing too well. I definitely think that Strickland was jabbing his face off a little bit. But as that round went on, DDP did better, and he started landing some good shots and good right hands over top, good left hands that were whipping the head back of Strickland. He made a comeback in that round and looked good. So it's like, what do you value more, the first half or the second half? And that's an argument for yourself. Was it a robbery? I don't think so. The fight was just so close in itself that I just can't claim robbery on it. You can make really solid arguments for both. Like DDP, you have a great argument. There's points to that. Strickland, there's great points to that as well. There's no one size fits all in these arguments. There's not really going to be this side has more over that side. It's completely even, in my opinion, on who you think won this fight. And I'm being completely honest with you. I'm not trying to be a shill, or I'm not trying to be a centrist in all this. This generally was an even fight, and it can go either way. For me personally, I think DDP won that fight. But if you think Strickland, I don't hate it. You have a good argument for it. It is what it is. One other thing that I heard were people claiming that this fight was rigged because they want DDP to fight Izzy, and that's the big money fight, the big major matchup, so they can sell a bunch of pay-per-views. I don't think so. I don't think it's true at all. I genuinely don't think the UFC really cares who won this fight, because I think either one, if it was Strickland versus Izzy 2 or DDP versus Izzy, would have sold similar levels of pay-per-views. They would have made a ton of money no matter who won this fight. Arguably, you can say DDP because it's a fresher matchup and there's more beef and history behind that. And Strickland last time blew him out the water. But I think in terms of making money, it would be similar. It would be relative in that sense that they both would sell a similar amount of pay-per-views. I don't think one over the other would sell a ton more. DDP versus Izzy might sell more, but would it be a drastic difference between Sean and Izzy? I don't think so at all. But I don't know. That's just my take on things. Great fight, though. Good scrap. It definitely made the card a little bit better, like 1 point better, because overall the card was complete ass. I'll go through the entire card real quick. Jimmy Flick versus Malcolm Gordon. I mean, what the fuck, Malcolm Gordon? You completely blew that finish. Pretty much fumbled the whole bag there. Jasuda Vicious versus Priscilla Cachoeira. I mean, good dominant win from Jasuda Vicious. Sam Patterson looked pretty good against Johan Linnes. He actually pretty much made light work of him. Easy peasy lemon squeezy for Sam Patterson. Took him down, got his back, subbed him just like that. Like he was nothing. Polyana Viana versus Jillian Robertson. Polyana Viana has pretty much nothing on the ground. She has absolutely no skill. Yeah, she's probably cut from the UFC. Sergey City versus Ramon Tavares. Absolute scrap. What a war. Exciting fight. For a second there, I thought City was going to turn into Oliveira because he was like getting dropped and getting right back up and going Terminator mode and just going after Tavares. But third round happened and he just didn't have the Oliveira gene in him. He didn't have the instincts to keep going like he did in the first and second, and just got outstruck a little bit and just lost the fight. Could have finished him, I think, at one point in the second round, but just didn't happen. I already mentioned Sean Woodson and Charles Jourdain, Katona and Armfield as well. Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I mean, actually a decent scrap, man. People were booing this in the crowd. It wasn't that bad of a fight, but wasn't super entertaining. No, Chris Curtis gets it done by split decision. Also, an iffy performance. Definitely can maybe call a robbery there. I think Chris Curtis won that fight, but I'm not going to debate it too hard. I don't really care enough to really debate it, if I'm being honest with you. But close fight, good scrap, but wasn't anything too crazy. And Raquel Pennington, the new bantamweight champion, beats Mauro Bueno Silva. Yeah, I didn't really watch this fight. I mean, it was decent in between, but it was mainly a clinch fest. Me and my whole chat were pretty much just trolling the entire time. Good win from Raquel Pennington. I'm happy for her. Great win, solid win. She does beat the Roy Cheat in Mauro Bueno Silva. What's next for both of them? I don't know. Nothing. I guess we'll just wait and see what they want to do with the UFC. Maybe Holly Holm can get a win or two, and then she fights for Raquel Pennington. There's really nothing at women's bantamweight right now. Maybe somebody can move up. Maybe Alexa Grasso can move up to fight them. I don't think she would even do that because I think she would be too small for bantamweight. But there's really nothing there for women's bantamweight. Maybe somebody can do something at some point. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the entire card. Really bad card. Snooze fest. Terrible. I did awful on picks. Awful day. If you paid for this card, you're not feeling good about yourself at all. You're feeling pretty trash right now. And I don't blame you at all. It happens. But I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for notifications. I'll see y'all. Peace. Terrible fucking card, man.